Representative Nancy Mace is facing a tough Republican primary today against a candidate backed by former President Trump. Her top challenger, Katie Arrington, has the backing of former President Trump. Arrington has also echoed Mr. Trump's baseless allegations about the legitimacy of the 2020 election. And Congresswoman Mace joins us now. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time. It's good to see you. So you made a name for yourself as the first woman to represent your district, and you also made a name for yourself for publicly parting with former President Trump on COVID and election legitimacy, and you've called out extremism within your own party. Yet after Trump endorsed your primary opponent, Arrington, you taped this video outside of Trump Tower. Take a listen.
Hey everyone, Congresswoman Nancy Mace here. I'm in front of Trump Tower today, and I remember in 2015 when President Trump announced his run. I was one of his earliest supporters. I actually worked for the campaign in 2016. I worked in 7 different states across the country to help get him elected. I supported him again in 2020 because of policies I believed in.
So, Congresswoman, did you seek Trump's endorsement?
Well, I've been endorsed by a number of folks in this race, including our very own Nikki Haley, who's the former governor, first female governor of South Carolina, and the ambassador to the United Nations. And she's been on the campaign trail with me the last 2 days. I've been endorsed by former President Trump's former chief of staff, as well, and several local mayors and other elected officials. I'm the only one in this race that has endorsements from local officials. I did not seek out his endorsement, but I've gotten a lot of support from the state of South Carolina, in the Low Country, in the 1st Congressional District, from a number of elected officials. And at the end of the day, endorsements only go so far, and all politics is local. I grew up here, I'm raising my family here, and I've been working really hard. And when I won this seat back for Republicans in 2020, it was a seat that my opponent had lost to a Democrat for the first time in 40 years, and that was in the 2018 midterm election cycle. I'm the only woman in this candidate who's had to win this race and keep it in Republican hands in November. And I'm really excited about the momentum that we have going into today when the polls close at 7 p.m. and on to November in the general election.
And if you are able to be successful in this primary, what would that say about the power of Trump's support in these midterms?
Well, anyone who's ever run for office knows that endorsements can only go so far. It's up to the candidate to do the work. That means raising money, that means campaigning, giving speeches, going door to door, and doing all the things necessary to pull out a win. And I worked really hard. I worked hard to win this seat back for Republicans 2 years ago, working really hard in the primary now, but I represent a swing district. This is not an easy district for any Republican. And I only won this seat by 1 point 2 years ago. And while I'm conservative, I represent more than just conservatives in this district. It's really important that we have someone that has a solid record that represents the values of this district. And that means someone who's independent-minded, independent thinking. I literally ran in 2020 by saying I was going to be an independent voice. I said I would not toe the party line, especially when Republicans spent too much or taxed too much, and have a great fiscally conservative record that both sides of the aisle value it. For example, I've never voted to raise taxes ever, and I have a record of voting to lower taxes 100% of the time. I'm running against someone who voted for the highest tax hike in South Carolina history, not once, but twice, and that was a gas tax. And we're all seeing gas prices skyrocket right now, and that tax is hurting hardworking families and hardworking folks in South Carolina.
With all of that said, why did you feel that it was important to show that you had supported the former president? I mean, taping that video outside Trump Tower did send a message that you were aligned with him.
Well, policy-wise, he did a lot of great things when it came to immigration and the wall and Title 42 and the Remain in Mexico. He had the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, one of the first tax cuts that I can think of in decades. And I'm a person who loves a good, solid tax cut, and certainly wish the state of South Carolina didn't have a state income tax right about now. But also, he did some very good things on prison reform and criminal justice reform. There were really good policies that every American could support. And I wanted folks to remind people that I was there, and those are policies I still support today. I haven't changed, and none of my values have changed. My principles and my values are the same as they always have been, which is a really important distinction. I'm running against someone who's been a mega flip-flopper, has flip-flopped on a number of different issues. and is running on a bed of lies right now and doesn't represent the values of the 1st Congressional District. And that's just important for voters to know who they're voting for when they go to the ballot box.
And I know you still have to get through the primary and your own general election, but would you support Trump if he were to run in 2024?
Will support the Republican nominee in 2024, and we're seeing a lot of names being thrown out there right now. I think the Republicans are going to have a great field of candidates, but we've got to get through 2022 first, and that means getting a majority back in November. And the only way Republicans can get a majority is if they win swing districts like South Carolina's 1st Congressional District in November, and we've got to have candidates that run and can win to do that.
On the day of the insurrection, I think our viewers might remember that you came on this show and you called out the former president for his response. Let's play a little bit of that.
He needs to get off Twitter. He needs to get on television. He needs to urgently ask. He needs to stop talking about voter fraud tonight. We're not having that conversation tonight. We need to ask these people to stop attacking our police, to stop violently attacking our law enforcement, our Capitol Police. We need to ask them to follow the rule of law. We need to ask them to go home.
So yesterday, during the January 6th committee hearings, we heard from members of Trump's inner circle, those closest to him, saying that despite what they were saying publicly at the time, the election wasn't stolen, something that we all know. But your opponent in this primary says it was. I'm curious what you make of yesterday's testimony from those closest to Trump. And do you think that that does anything to kind of change the dynamics in the Republican Party at this point?
I was actually out campaigning because we have a primary today and polls close at 7 p.m. tonight. I've been out campaigning with Nikki Haley here in the Low Country over the last 2 days. I haven't had a chance to look at any of the hearings. In fact, last weekend and last week, my kids and I had my oldest was driving me and my other kid, and we were going door to door. This past weekend, we were on electric scooters. We've been working really, really hard on the campaign. This is like the Super Bowl for those who are running for office, and your primaries are today. And so we've been working really hard on that. But some of the things that I've said in the past, for example, we have 4 federal agencies that are investigating January 6th. And the Department of Justice has had over 800 arrests so far in their investigation. And we really ought to let our federal agencies that can file charges and press charges and hold people accountable, let them do their job.
As you're going door to door and talking to constituents, are they talking about the 2020 election? How is that ranking on their list of issues? Because in a lot of Republican primaries, including yours, your opponent is still talking about the results of the 2020 election and making these false claims.
The number one issue that I hear from voters about is inflation and gas prices and grocery store prices. And that is based on over 40,000 doors that we've knocked, thousands of text messages and phone calls. That's based on real conversations with real people and real voters about what's on their mind. And inflation is a real problem. We've had double-digit inflation over the last 90 days. We've seen shortages of baby formula. We've seen it right here in the 1st Congressional District. But families and hardworking Americans are suffering right now and facing enormous challenges, particularly financial challenges. And that's what voters are talking about, not what the press is trying to write about these days or the headlines are trying to grab, but they're really talking about the bread and butter, kitchen table issues like inflation and gas prices.
I mean, I do think, though, that there are a lot of Republicans that are still talking about the 2020 election. There are a lot in Congress who would rather be talking about inflation and other issues, but there are a lot of people running in Republican primaries across the country, some winning, continuing to kind of harp on these false election claims. Is that an effective strategy for your party?
Well, I think really every district is different, and the right person who represents their district is the person that's going to win, both in their primary and in November. And I can tell you, for example, when the invasion of Ukraine happened, the number one issue people were talking about was Ukraine in my district. And then when we got beyond that, it's been inflation and gas prices. Immigration and the border is an issue. Just last year in my district, we had a member of the MS-13 gang that was arrested. In my hometown 2 years ago, there was a sex trafficking ring that was busted. Over 28 illegal immigrants busted in that operation. Those are the things that I hear about more than any other issue right now facing anyone in my district. And again, My district's a little bit different than maybe other Republican districts because it's very much a purple district. It's swing in November. I only won this seat by 1 point 2 years ago. And that's something to keep in mind, that every district is different. And when you're talking with voters in a swing district, they tend to have a more independent mind. They want someone who's going to march to the beat of their own drum and really represent their values in that district. And that's what we've been doing from day one.
And you mentioned that Nikki Haley has been in the state campaigning for you. She's done some ads for you as well. Is she someone that you would like to see run for higher office?
I love Nikki Haley. She's been a good friend to me. She's a great American. She's a great leader. One of the things that I have learned from her over the last 2 years is about leadership, steady, stable leadership, and the value of hard work. We had one of my last debates a few weeks ago. I was reaching out to her and I texted her, not realizing she was on the other side of the world, 14 hours ahead, and she responded within 5 minutes. Doesn't matter where in the world she is. If you need something, she's there for you. And I'm grateful for her friendship. I'm grateful for her support. And I think she's a great leader for our state and our nation.
Representative Nancy Mace, thank you for taking some time out from the campaign trail to talk to us. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you.